to Codex, a history of video games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I am Tyler Osby.
And today we're going to talk about the original Xbox and the history. And this is going to be a 2-part episode. So get ready for it.
Super exciting. We got so much information here. We're going to really just blast you with all this great Xbox
this is the first time us researching kind of off book. I should say that much.
Yeah, we are no longer reading The History of Video Games, The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen L. Kent, which is available for $5 on Amazon.
This is all us, baby. It's just you and me, Tyler, and the internet, and the power of the internet.
That's right.
Do you want to start us off?
I will. So we kind of already touched on this in the final episode of the book, but there were rumors of Microsoft jumping into the console market as early as 1998. The initial team created to make the Xbox consisted of Microsoft employees on the DirectX team. DirectX, remember, is the sort of software layer that allows people to make games on Windows PCs that can use a wide variety of hardware. So this group consisted of Kevin Backus, Seamus Blackley, Otto Burks, and Ted Haas.
I think Haas is good.
Ted Haas. They actually made a prototype by tearing apart some Dell laptops. So I think it's really important to stress the reason behind Microsoft creating a game console. Essentially, Microsoft thought that the PS2 might be a threat to PC gaming, which is, not a terrible thing to be scared of. The PS2 was pretty great. What the DirectX team actually found was that PCs will always be technically superior to consoles. But in 1998, PC parts were cheap enough that you could make a console that ran PC quality games using more or less off-the-shelf parts. This wasn't Microsoft's first foray into gaming. In 1996, they had released the Sidewinder controller for the PC.
I didn't know anything about this. What is it?
It's like a game controller you plugged into your computer. It was kind of a line of game controllers. So they had like a traditional pad, they had a joystick, and it was this Sidewinder line of sort of gaming products.
Oh, that's cool. It's also got a cool name too.
Yeah,
it's a Transformer name.
I had a buddy with a Sidewinder. This was at a time where PC game controllers were terrible. They were truly awful, and it was always just like, why doesn't somebody just make a PlayStation controller for a computer? And nobody really would do it. I don't know if there were patent issues or anything like that, but man, PC controllers were real bad.
And now you just plug in your old Xbox controller. Boom.
Yep. So since DOS and Windows were the dominant platforms of their time, it only made sense that Microsoft would want to have some sort of relationship with video gaming. At that time, they also had the Internet Gaming Zone, which was an online portal hosting lots of fun mini games. There was a lot of
go ahead.
Like card games, hearts and spades, and you could play like chess and stuff online. It was like, this was 1996 internet times, so it was.
That's 100% what I was going to say. Is it like you and your friends just play solitaire together in like a chat room? Is that what it is?
Yeah, pretty much. which was pretty novel at the time to be able to like, oh my gosh, I can make a move on my computer and my friend across the world can see it in real time. Wow. So Microsoft had kind of always been about PC gaming in as far as it would benefit them. They never really. Up until the Xbox, they hadn't really dove into video gaming, but they recognized that it was an important part of their platform, and they kind of, experimented a bit. But remember when we were talking about the Dreamcast and how it ran Windows CE? That's technically Microsoft's first jump into the console gaming space. And, that was like sort of their way of testing the waters. Windows CE was meant to be the primary operating system for the Dreamcast, but it wasn't very good, and so developers chose to not use it, and they used like Sega's proprietary stuff that they had made for it. But the Windows CE logo is still found on the front of every Dreamcast, which is pretty neat and kind of fun. Actually, fun fact: Peter Moore, he was an executive at Sega during the Dreamcast days, would eventually leave Sega to run Microsoft's Xbox division. Like he would be
small world,
big kahuna. Yeah, and then he would go on to EA. I think he's at EA now.
He's out there making it so you have to pay for a bunch of loot boxes. I see you, Peter Moore. I see what you're doing.
Yeah, he knows what's up. But yeah. You want to take it?
Yeah, sure. So we're not going to get like into all the, hey, they said this and they said that accounts of like going into and designing the Xbox. But I will say that after the DirectX team told Bill Gates their findings about you could build a console with PC parts and be like a low grade gaming PC essentially in a living room, Bill went on a retreat like all tech people do. And when he came back, he was like, you know what? All in on Xbox. We're doing it. And that's when the team kind of really started. So Bill Gates went on a retreat and was like, let's do it right now. That's pretty much, I feel like that's how everything happens. Some sort of retreat You know?
Yeah, I like to think it was like by himself, and he like meditated in a cabin somewhere and was like, "Yes, the Direct Xbox
It's perfect.
is going to be a thing. It's perfect."
Yeah, and that's actually the next thing is it was actually called the Direct Xbox was the name of it because it ran on DirectX, which is a multitude of applications that helped run multimedia files in Windows, and it was just called DirectX. I don't know if they called it as an API. I think that's what it's called, right?
Yeah, an API. Basically, what it does is it sort of abstracts the hardware from the software. So like back before, in the days before DirectX, if you wanted to make a game and there was like, few different kinds of graphics cards available on the market, you had to program your game for each kind of graphics card because they all worked differently. So Microsoft was like, you know what? Let's make the graphics card manufacturers do that hard work, and we will just sort of present this layer called DirectX. So like, as long as you make a thing that works with DirectX, it will work with whatever graphics cards work with DirectX.
So smart. But it's weird to me that you'd have to play a game like before this and you'd be like, okay, I got this graphics card, so I got to set it to this. And then I got this sound card and I got to set it to this. And you're just like, oh, it would take so long just to run your silly little Star Wars game. Okay.
I know. And it was such a pain for the developers too, because they had to make the game again, essentially, for each
for
piece.
each
So
piece
DirectX is great.
Oh, yeah. DirectX. You're doing great things, DirectX. So initially, the Xbox was going to run DirectX and be on a version of Windows 2000. And I think it ended up being that way, right? It ended up being on Windows 2000, right? Or a modified version of it?
Yeah, modified version of Windows 2000. Windows,
Because you didn't have like a desktop and all that stuff. So they did this because they wanted to make it really, really easy for programmers to make games for the then DirectX box. Now, a fun thing about the name change is Xbox, the marketing people were like, that sounds awful. I don't think that's going to do really well. And then they did the actual name Xbox in focus groups, and everyone was like, oh, I actually really like that name, the Xbox. And they're like, well, I guess we have a catchy name, so we can just sell it now. And that's kind of how it became Xbox. It was just going to be full-on direct Xbox, but the focus groups were like, all right, we're doing it. So, yeah.
Direct Xbox would have been terrible.
Yeah, it would have not been catchy. It's got to be short, PS4, Xbox One. Like, it's got to be quick, I mean,
you get 3 syllables.
Yeah, you get 3
maximum.
Yeah, Dreamcast. That sounds great. So, as we said in our previous episode, Bill Gates announced the Xbox on March 10th, 2000 at the Game Developers Conference. And he also wore a sweet leather jacket with a big green X on it, which is very, very important to me. I think you should always talk about video game fashion at these award shows. Now, the Xbox wasn't actually unveiled as a product until January 3rd, 2001 at CES 2001 in Las Vegas. And it was Bill Gates and who else but Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson unveiling the Xbox. He wore some really cool sunglasses I saw in a picture. It's great,
Oh man, did he come out and he's like, this is what The Rock has been cooking?
Yeah, he's been cooking this up. Actually, The Rock was on the design team. It was just a secret. No one told anyone about. Also, this is before he didn't want to be not called The Rock anymore. So I think he was just The Rock. Because he had this very serious point where he's like, no, I'm Dwayne Johnson now. Maybe Dwayne The Rock Johnson. But, we got to just call me Dwayne, please. But this is the part when he was like, I'm still The Rock. I'm in wrestling. Let's do this. So the most novel thing about the Xbox at the time was its technical specifications. It ran on a 733 megahertz Intel Coppermine processor, which is heavily based on the Celeron processor with a few upgrades. It had a 64 megabytes of SD RAM and an 8 gigabyte hard drive, which for the time was huge.
It sounds small now, but it was literally 1,000 times larger than a PS2 memory card.
That's so nuts. And later models would come with a 10 gigabyte hard drive. But that last 2 gigabytes would not be available on the console at launch. So this hard drive gave the Xbox more storage space than any other console ever at that time. And a cool thing about it was this way, you could save your files to it, like video game files just saved on the console. No more memory cards. You could also just rip the games to the hard drive so they would load faster. I did that all the time. I always installed it to the hard drive. And then the cool thing that I would do is I would rip my audio CDs to the Xbox, and then I would play Grand Theft Auto 3 for Xbox, and I would listen to my own music when I'm driving in my cars.
Oh yeah, no, the game install function that was later on in the 360. The original Xbox didn't have that, but you could rip your audio CDs though.
Oh, you could? I thought I could play. Maybe I just am making this all up in my head. Maybe I just blend them all together. Probably.
Well, if you had a modified Xbox, you could do that. So.
Oh, I didn't have that. Microsoft, don't come for me. I didn't illegally mod your system. They were about to knock on the door, the Microsoft police. They heard.
Then now they're walking away now.
Yeah, they heard we heard you jailbroke your Xbox and put 15 different versions of Jaybird on it. We're coming for you. That's what they heard. So,
Yeah.
do you want to talk about the graphics processor?
Yeah, so the graphics processor was a custom chip made by NVIDIA. It was pretty heavily based on their like lower mid-end GeForce 3. It was kind of a hybrid between like a GeForce 2 and 3 that NVIDIA was selling at the time. So it was pretty... I mean, as far as game consoles go, it was incredibly high-end. Like this thing blew the GameCube and the PS2 out of the water.
Take that, Sony and Nintendo.
Yeah, it's in this generation, like in lots of generations, you can sort of pick and choose like which console is maybe the most powerful in this area, or this console can do this one better in this area. But like in this era, the Xbox was unequivocally the superior hardware, like in terms of just speed and like raw.
Also, it's
power,
kind
right?
of important to note that if it wasn't for this system, we wouldn't have probably gotten the huge like technical arms race console wars we have now, where the PS4 and Xbox are always trying to outdo each other.
Yeah.
And then Nintendo's just kind of doing their own thing, but you know, they do their own thing.
Nintendo has realized that their place in the market is different from Sony and Microsoft, and they're capitalizing on that. They do a really great job. I could do a whole podcast episode on that. But the Xbox, just like the PS2, would also ship with a DVD drive, though due to licensing restrictions, users would need to purchase the DVD playback kit. So like you had to buy the remote, basically, if you wanted to watch DVDs on it. And the reason they did this, and I'm pulling this out of my head now, so I could be wrong here, but the reason they did this is because the DVD Consortium, a group of companies that invented the DVD standard, they charged a licensing fee for devices that played DVD movies. And so it was like a flat $20 per device or something like that. And so Microsoft was like, well, not everybody's going to watch DVDs on this thing. So if we can avoid paying this fee, then we will. And so they didn't have to pay the fee when they sold the Xbox, but users who wanted to watch DVDs basically had to pay the fee to watch DVDs. And Microsoft like made it okay because they were like, well, here's the remote, right? And it was like, yes, well, of course you need a remote.
I 100% bought the DVD playback kit. I have it. I remember the remote. The
Me too.
remote was kind of slick. I liked it.
Yeah.
It's
one of my favorite remotes still.
Very nice remote. I really enjoyed it. I watched a lot of movies on my Xbox because I had it in like the upstairs den of our house in high school, and so I was all about it.
Yeah. Not too many buttons. Like the PlayStation 2 remote was just like so many buttons.
Yeah, and now of course we'd get like really angry about this if they shipped a console and they're like, if you want to play Blu-rays, you have to buy a remote. But the Xbox One actually has a remote, and it is great because if you leave your controller on while you're watching a movie, it really burns the battery down. But the Xbox One remote will go to sleep like almost immediately. The buttons will dim down, and you'll know it's asleep. And then when you pick it up, they'll light up again. It's all motion sensors. Highly recommend the Xbox One DVD remote if you're just trying to watch a lot of movies. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty great. The other thing about the Xbox that was remarkably forward-thinking was networking. So at this point in time, 2001, the PS2 didn't have networking capabilities yet. Sony had promised that they would release accessories for it, like to connect it to the internet. So the PS2 would eventually get some networking stuff. And the Dreamcast at this time only had that phone line modem hookup, and they had a broadband adapter you could buy. But the Xbox included a 100 megabit Ethernet port. So it had no support at all for dial-up networking, which was still the most popular way of connecting to the internet at this point in time. When Microsoft put the Xbox out and they were like, hey, if you're on dial-up, you are not going to be able to play online when we launch our online service later on. It kind of rubbed some people the wrong way because they were like, but I don't have broadband, myself included. And Microsoft was like, you shouldn't be playing games on dial-up anyway, which is true.
Yeah, could you even play games on dial-up?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, a lot of games, online games before broadband existed, but they were different and they were not quite as real time. But yeah, people used to play like Quake 3 over dial-up, and like older games work okay over dial-up. But Microsoft was like, no, we're going to provide a pretty robust set of features here, and dial-up's just not going to cut it. And also, we know everybody's going to be moving away from dial-up anyway because clearly broadband is the future. So anyway, but Microsoft was criticized at the time for not including a phone jack basically on their Xbox. But yeah, so speaking of networking, there was no online service at launch. That's the other thing is they put this in their console knowing that later on they would have Xbox Live, but Xbox Live didn't exist at launch. No games went online for the first year of Xbox. There were a few games in the first year that could take advantage of the networking, like you could have a Halo LAN party. Remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could link your Xboxes together for some games using the Ethernet port, but it didn't connect to online. Actually, at the time, there was software you could get for your computer that would basically trick the Xbox into seeing your computer as another Xbox, and then it would connect you to play Halo online with other people. So you would like choose the game on your computer and then go to System Link on your Xbox, and it would be like, here's your game, and you would play with other people, and it actually worked okay.
Once again, nerds find a way, much like life in Jurassic Park. They always find a way. It's beautiful.
Yep. So yeah, you could play Halo online. There weren't that many people playing online because it was kind of a pain to set up, but you could. So yeah, that's that. All of these things kind of sound just like a regular PC. I mean, you got the Intel processor, you got an NVIDIA graphics card, you got hard drive, you got regular old SD RAM in there. And the reason it sounds like a regular PC is because that's what it was. It was a lower mid-range PC. And it had some specs that were specifically optimized for gaming. It had a few little extra bells and whistles for developers to use. But it even ran on a stripped-down version of Windows. The beauty of this is that developers who made PC games already, they pretty much knew how to make a game for the Xbox. They didn't have to learn anything new. If you were a PC game developer and you wanted to make a game for the GameCube or the PS2, you had to learn how those systems work. You had to learn their operating system, you had to learn the hardware, you had to learn all the tricks to make it work. But if you just put your games on Xbox, it was a pretty straightforward process. You just had to deal with knowing that like it wasn't a high-end PC. So but you knew exactly what you were dealing with, so it was able to optimize.
Yeah, that's so smart, It's kind of weird to me that, I mean, it makes sense for Microsoft to do that, but I mean, Sony kind of did it on accident before, which is kind of interesting,
Yeah.
They're like doing that. They just did it without thinking of the whole PC architecture in mind.
Right. Yeah. And nowadays, like both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One are kind of do the same thing. They're just like low mid-end PCs that play games, and the technical similarities between the PS4 and the Xbox One are pretty mind-boggling. That they're very similar.
Oh wow!
But back in the day, all three platforms were wildly different. But the Xbox was so similar to a PC that it was like comforting for PC developers, and that's something that you would see a lot throughout as we go through like the games that came out on the Xbox. You'll see a trend of games that were like PC exclusives being brought to the Xbox. Also, games like Morrowind, Knights of the Old Republic. Those games didn't see PlayStation 2 or GameCube releases, but they did see Xbox releases. And what they have in common is they were PC games first, and then they were easily ported to
Morrowind changed my life. Morrowind is so good. Oh, man.
That's a great game.
It is a great game. Okay, I'm going to talk about the controller for a second, because this is a big deal. The Duke is what it was called.
The Duke.
Was it a controller that came out with the Xbox? It was gigantic and ridiculous is how I would describe it.
I hated it. It was like the biggest reason I didn't want to get an Xbox.
It was like full on, like you're holding a football almost is what it felt like.
It was truly awful.
But there are some people that do love it for the nostalgia sake, to the point where Microsoft recently, I think it was earlier this year, re-released
it was like
the
April,
Duke.
I think.
Yeah, they re-released the Duke for Xbox One as a collector's item. And I think you could plug it in and it would work, right? It would work with your Xbox One, 100%. I think they only made like 15,000 of them or something like that. It was a very small amount.
I think it's a pretty niche market. It had a screen on it, too, that played the original Xbox, like flubber boot-up animation, you know?
Yeah, that's great. Oh,
Yeah.
man, that's so good. But then Xbox came out with the Model S, and that controller came out at the end of 2003, and for Japanese consoles, I believe, right? And then it was adopted for all the Xbox consoles because that controller's perfect. It's so good. It was so good.
When they were like trying to figure out how they wanted to launch the system in Japan, they would like take it there and do focus groups, and they're like, "Hey, how do you like it?" And Japanese players were like, "This controller's awful. Please make a smaller one." And so they did.
And they're like, "Okay, sounds good."
And they did, and the Model S controller is way better.
Way better. So
it's one of my favorite controllers. I have a lot of nostalgia for that controller.
Yeah, it was just a really good controller. I was a big fan. I mean, the Xbox original was like the console. My brother had a PlayStation 2, and he got that earlier. And then like a year later, I got, actually probably 2 years, because I got mine when the S controller was already out. So it had to be 2003, 2004. So probably a couple years later, I got an Xbox. I think it was one of the first things I ever bought with my own money, too. Mm-hmm. Like I got it from my Cold Stone Creamery money, when I worked there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt really good. But
making those big bucks when you got your first job and you get a paycheck that's like $150 and you're like, yes, I have unlimited money.
Yeah, I made this money slinging ice cream. So now I get to throw this money around and buy an Xbox. But I am a big fan of that S controller. It felt just really good to the point where I didn't really like the PlayStation controller afterward. Like I was just kind of weirded out by it. But anyway, let's talk about the launch.
I got one fun fact about.
Let's go fun facts.
Fun facts about the Xbox controller port. So it looks like a proprietary like controller thing, but actually it's just regular old USB. If you cut that wire open on a controller, the wires, you can wire them up to like a standard USB plug-in, and then you could plug it into your computer, and with the right software, you could use your Xbox controller on your computer, and it was awesome. I did that.
Really?
I made adapters. I used to make them for my friends too, and I would like make these adapters so people, because they had the controller had the breakaway cable. Oh, that's the other thing. You had that breakaway cable, so that like on the end of the cable was like another plug-in basically, and what it would do is it would detach very easily if you pulled on it, so that it wouldn't like pull your Xbox off the shelf if you like, I don't know, ran out of cord or something. It would just break away. And so what I would do is I'd take those breakaway cables, cut them off, and like solder them to like another USB cable that you could get for super cheap, and you could plug it into your PC and use it to play PC games.
Gosh, Tyler, look at you, young Tony Stark, Tyler Osby, amazing, beautiful. So do you want to talk about the launch real quick? Or you want me to, I'll handle the launch. You got to talk about the games, because the launch games.
We can share the games. I'm sure we both have.
Oh, we have
thoughts.
We have nostalgia. I actually do, because there's one game on here that I do know quite a bit about. So I'm pretty pumped to talk about it. So the Xbox launched in North America on November 15th, 2001, just 3 days before the Nintendo GameCube. That's a middle finger from Bill Gates, I think.
Yeah,
so
really got him.
There's a great picture of Bill Gates at a Toys R Us. Oh, feel sad about Toys R Us. Let's have a moment of silence for
Toys R Us.
Let's have a moment of silence for Toys R Us right now. You ready? Let's go. Okay, and he was there.
So sad.
Yeah, so sad. He was selling the first Xbox to like a really enthusiastic fan, which I think is really cool. You know, he's like, out
he's
there.
got like an Xbox hat on. He's like super stoked to get this Xbox. It's awesome.
Yeah, he's getting into it. So it was a pretty large event, probably because there was quite a bit of hype around the games that the console was launching with, as well as the promised games coming down the line. So I'll talk about the first of the games, and then do you want to just go like through them? We'll figure something out. But the Xbox had a really pretty good launch lineup. So it had Shrek, which was definitely probably the most mediocre of the games, I would say, was Shrek. Because it was just notable because it was one of the first console games to use a technique called deferred shading. And it was actually developed by DICE, who would become well known for pushing technical boundaries with games in the Battlefield series that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So
and Mirror's Edge.
Oh, yeah, Mirror's Edge. Oh, and then
DICE makes a lot of great games.
Yeah, and then I don't know much about Oddworld. Do you know a bunch about Oddworld? I don't know anything about it, really.
The only thing that I know about Oddworld Munch's Odyssey is that the cover of the box is like a soda can, and it makes it look super silly, and I haven't actually played any of the games in the Oddworld series. So this was the third game in the Oddworld series, which I guess was on the original PlayStation. They were like side scrollers, and then this was like a 3D platforming kind of thing. Later on in the Xbox's lifespan, it would get a game called Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, which looks way more serious and dark and gritty, just judging by the cover purely because I haven't played any of the Oddworld games. But I thought it was interesting. It was like, this is the same series as that game with the soda can on the front. It's weird.
Yeah, if you play Oddworld, get at us. We want to know about it because I don't know anything about that game. And then they had a Dead or Alive 3, which was a console exclusive, they said, despite the other two releasing on PS1 and PS2 respectively. So they got Dead or Alive 3 and Sony had 1 and 2, which I think is pretty good get for Xbox, you know?
Yeah, which is I think that's interesting because like if you were a Dead or Alive player, you had a PS1, you had a PS2 because you wanted to play Dead or Alive. And then when Dead or Alive 3 came out, it was like, time to get an Xbox, I guess. Like that's an interesting choice. Good get on Microsoft's part. Interesting decision on Dead or Alive developers, which I think is Team Ninja, I want to say.
Oh, Team Ninja. Do you want to talk about Project Gotham?
Yeah, Project Gotham Racing. This kicked off a series of games. I think there were 3 Project Gotham Racing games, 2 games on the Xbox and then 1 on the 360. It was kind of a cool, like it had realistic graphics. It was a racing game that you race through the city. And it was like realistic graphics, but the controls and the feel of the game was more arcade. So it was cool because it looked nice and also played nice. I think I cannot confirm this. I think this game probably did well because people thought it was a Batman racing game because it was called Project Gotham.
Oh, yeah.
I definitely thought it was a Batman racing game. And then when I played it, I was like, there's no Batman in this game. And I was disappointed.
They got you. You felt bamboozled?
I felt a little bamboozled. The game was still really good. It was like a really great racing game. Not quite it wasn't like a Gran Turismo competitor because it was so arcadey and like not realistic in its driving physics, but
that's sometimes
really
just fun, you know? Let's take away some realism. Let's have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
It's a video game.
The next game on our list of launch titles was NFL Fever 2002. EA would release Madden 2002 on the Xbox at the same time, but Microsoft wanted to challenge EA's dominance. It wasn't received quite as good as Madden, but it was a pretty decent football game, and it set the foundation for Microsoft to continue challenging EA with future NFL Fever games, until EA got the exclusive rights to the NFL license, which I'm still salty about.
I think we should all be salty about it. It's pretty upsetting.
It's like a decade and a half later, and I'm like still upset.
Yeah, it just means I think you need to have a little bit of competition to make it fun,
Yeah.
To because if you notice, Madden games haven't changed a lot, probably because of that license. They know they can do it. Also, I just get upset when I want them to don't release a game every year. Just update the rosters. It just seems so wasteful. I don't know. That's how I feel about it.
People keep buying it, and I guess they keep selling it.
That's true. And also, I didn't realize that Madden actually had a big esports following. There's people that play Madden competitively. That's a big old deal, I guess. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's like a sportception, physical sport, video game sport.
Die in the game sport, you die in the real life sport. Is that kind of what it's like?
That's right.
Oh, man, I was super excited at this next one because you put a note in there about one of my favorite games of all time for PS2.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about Air Force Delta Storm.
So, Air Force Delta Storm was a futuristic fighter jet game. It had great graphics and it ran smoothly, but it wasn't as good, and Tyler puts it's in his opinion, but it's in my opinion as well. Ace Combat 4 Shattered Skies is one of the best flight jet fighter games of all time to me. I loved this game. I loved it so much. The story was really good as you were playing along, and you it was just a great game. I mean, I know we're not supposed to talk about other games, and this is on PS2, but if you haven't played Ace Combat 4 Shattered Skies, pick it up. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a solid game. Mad Dash Racing was also on there. It was different from any other racing game we've ever played. It's not a driving game, but you're running on your feet. It's a run racing game.
Yeah,
but
all different. It's got these goofy characters that are all running. I don't know. It's weird.
It still feels like you're driving a car though, and it's really just weird to see yourself running instead of driving. When you accelerate by pressing the X or A button, it's a weird game. You want to talk about cell damage?
Yeah, cell damage. This was the first time I'd ever seen cell shading in a video game, which is a technique used to make games kind of look like cartoons. So cell damage looked like you were playing a cartoon. I didn't play it very much, but I do remember seeing it in magazines at the time and being like, wow, that's a really interesting art style. It was a more cartoony version of Twisted Metal. It was also on the PS2 and the GameCube, so it wasn't an exclusive, but it was a launch title, and I feel like we should talk about it
for a minute. Give it a little love. Probably it was the same with Arctic Thunder too, huh?
Yeah, Arctic Thunder was a snowmobile racing game. No one remembers it because it wasn't great.
Okay, that's the game.
That's all there is to say about Arctic Thunder.
That you didn't know a lot about. Fusion Frenzy it really took advantage of the 4-player Xbox, and it was just a party game. You'd be this group of. It was kind of like a serious Mario Party is kind of how I would describe it, but there's no board game access. It's just mini games, and there were a lot of games where you were in those hamster ball things. Running around, and you'd be trying to grab stuff, and your friends could bump you off the edge, and then you'd have to come. I played this game actually quite a bit, and I was a really big fan of it, to the point where I'm surprised we haven't had a sequel.
Yeah,
because it's a lot
it plays on Xbox One now, right?
Yeah, I think you can get it. You can get it backwards compatible. I think it's a great game. It's a really good game, to the point where I was really surprised they kind of bailed on this, because as far as you have 3 friends over at your house goes, it would be really, really fun. And with online capability now, you could do that online, and it'd be amazing.
Yeah. So, I would play Fusion Frenzy online.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun game, though, just if you have 3 plans on your couch at home. It's great. I'm trying to think of the other game modes. It was a lot of you being in that hamster ball though, and going around in like different game modes with that. I just remember playing it at a friend who had it, and I thought I heard about the game and I didn't have it for my Xbox, and I'm like, sure, I'll give this a try. And then I played it for like 4 straight hours with all of those friends, and it was so fun. So Fusion Frenzy, great game. Now let's talk about Tyler's favorite, one of Tyler's favorite games, it sounds like, right? This might be one
of all time.
Oh, here we go.
And also my favorite launch title for the Xbox.
And it's probably not what you're thinking.
It's not.
Listener.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2X, which is the definitive version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. The only thing that would make this game, this Tony Hawk Pro Skater better, is if they had been able to include like somehow Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 into it. So basically what Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2X was, it was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 with all the gameplay elements of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 and all the levels. And it also had all the levels from Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1, which made it obviously the best Tony Hawk Pro Skater released up until that point, because you could go back and you could play all of the old levels from Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1, and you could do sick combos because you could manual now, like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. And it also had the best graphics of any Tony Hawk game up to that point. The Dreamcast, I would say, has the best version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, but the Xbox has 2X, so it's even better. So if you're looking for the definitive way to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, it's Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2X on the Xbox. The only crappy part is it's not backward compatible on Xbox One. I do think it plays on 360, but yeah, once it comes out on Xbox One, then I won't need any other skateboarding games for the rest of my life.
It is the best.
Big fan. They also had 4 levels, extra levels that were just like new to Tony Hawk Pro Skater. So that was pretty cool. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 would come out the next year, but this was definitely the best way to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
So nice. Dude,
Yeah.
I when you told me it was a combination of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, I was like, how did I not own this game on Xbox?
Yeah.
What was
it's
I doing?
always super cheap too. If you see it at like a GameStop, well, I guess they don't sell original Xbox games anymore, but like if you try to find it online, I think it's super cheap. Like you can get it for under $5, I think.
Yeah, especially if you go on eBay or something like that. But it's, oh man, it's a great game. So I know it's a short episode. This is where we're going to cut it off, because the next launch game we're going to talk about is the one you're all thinking of, and we don't want this to be an hour and a half episode, because we're going to probably spend a really, really long time on this, and also talking about Xbox Live. So real quick, announcement time. We are taking the week off for Christmas, and then we will be coming back. So the next episode will be releasing on the 31st of December, because this comes out on the 17th.
New Year's Eve.
Yep, and then we'll come out on New Year's Eve. So that's the next episode. So next, on the 24th, when you don't see an episode, don't tweet at us. I mean, unless you want to say I miss you so much, which we'll say back. I mean, obviously. But
feel free to tweet.
Yeah, we will be coming back with part 2 of our Xbox history. I don't know. Coverage. I was going to say foray. I'm just trying to think of weird words. But anyway, we'll be back with that on the 31st. And now, Tyler, what you been playing?
I've been playing Destiny 2 because there's a new event called The Dawning, which is like Christmas time in Destiny Land. And so I've been baking cookies and delivering them to people all over the solar system so that I can get my Santa sleigh sparrow, which I actually got last night, I think. So now we can both be Santa.
Ooh, yeah.
I have also, let me think, what have I also been playing? Oh, I picked up, I got back into Vainglory on iPhone or on mobile. It's a MOBA, kind of like a Dota or League of Legends that is like you play on your phone, and I really love it, and it's really fun. The game modes, it's got like a 5v5 mode, like standard 3 lanes MOBA mode, and it's got like a 3v3 mode, which has 1 lane and a jungle. And so like the 5v5 mode is like half-hour games, and the 3v3 mode is like 15-20 minute games, and then it has a couple other like more fun modes that are even shorter. And it's just really fun to play on your phone, and I'm having a great time with it, and I've been playing it whenever I get a chance.
Wait, what's this called again? Just one more time, shout it out.
It's called Vainglory, Vainglory.
Vainglory. Not like your veins in your body, but like vain, like, oh, Carly Simon, you're so vain. Like that, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You probably think this game is about you, don't you, Tyler? Don't you?
Don't you?
Don't you?
I do. Vainglory.
Real quick, before I do what I've been playing, I want to mention something that I just noticed, because I was going to shout out, we got another rating this week, which was really cool, and I wanted to thank them. And then iTunes completely changed their store policy.
Oh, no.
So if you gave us just a rating, that disappeared. I don't know what happened. They did it with every single podcast on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. So just thank you for the rating. We appreciate it. And I'm sorry it disappeared. I don't know why they did it. But now you have to leave a rating and review, I think, to make it work. I don't know what they're trying to do, but I just wanted to say that before I got into it and before I forgot. But what
maybe there's some bot stuff they're trying to prevent.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Like just a bunch of people like getting accounts and liking. I don't know. But anyway, please leave us a review and a rating. That's always makes us feel good and makes us very happy. I have been playing Pokemon's Moon, Ultra Moon. I'm playing that a lot this week because I've been on the road. I've been traveling a lot. And then we played Destiny. And then you're like, I'm going to go to bed. And I'm like, very reasonable. Have a good night, Tyler. Miss you so much. And then I stayed up 2 more hours and just grinded out the Dawning because I just wanted to get the Santa sleigh because I was into it. And so I got the Santa sleigh now. I love baking cookies for the NPCs. It's my favorite thing in the world. It's really funny. And if you noticed, I haven't talked to you about this yet, Tyler. You give the Cryptarch a burnt edge transit for Christmas. That's what you give him for the Dawning. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
It's so great. So they're kind of like noting their community, what's going on. But with that, I've been playing Battlefield 5, got majorly screwed up with some TTK update.
Really? I need to jump back into that because I played a little bit with you and your brother.
Yeah, we can play definitely more when I come back next. Like I'll come back on Tuesday. But man, there's some people that are real salty about it on the internet right now because the time to kill is way too long, which makes it so essentially the medic class with their very, very weak SMGs can't kill anyone. Like no one's being a medic right now. Yeah, so it's kind of...
I love medic.
I know, and I do too. It was like my favorite class to play, and now no one's really doing it, so it's kind of a bummer. But that's what I've been playing, and yeah, so sorry again.
I'm going to play some Battlefield tonight after I do my Destiny chores.
Yeah, do it. The war stories are actually really fun too. The war story, like single player mode, it's weird because it pushes you to be like super stealthy, but you don't have to. You can just go ahead and like wreck shop and get in a plane and shoot everything if you really want to, which is funny because that was my favorite part about Battlefield is that your guy just knows how to fly a plane, operate boats, be in a tank. Like he just knows. I'm like, look at this jack of all trades running around the battlefield. I'm really good at this, you know? But yeah, that's my favorite thing about Battlefield.
So realistic.
Totally real. Toast realism all around. But that is our episode for today, and we will continue, like I said, on the 31st.
All right.
So is there anything you want to say to the listener? Wait. Whoops. I forgot.
One more thing?
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter at SneakerElf with ELPH. You can find me at MeColetta. You can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. And then you can rate and review us and all that jazz on any podcasting platform of your choice. That's it. Thank you all so much for listening, and bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
This has been a Podaholics Comedy Network presentation. Podaholics.com